Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. What's up? So, today we're going to be talking about traditional Chinese medicine in relation to climate, the weather, how people can relate to the weather or just climate change in general, because there are seasons to each element. Being that we are coming close to the end of summer, going into fall, we are actually in the element of earth. So we're gonna go on what we could do to better take on certain commodities, I guess you could call it. Basically the characteristics, what can we do to keep our energy levels high. This is when we are at our best, as well as earth elements. Not everybody's an earth element, of course, right? We all have there's 5 different elements and we all have our own element. So to see the elements,
if I remember them,
Yeah, go ahead.
One's metal,
yeah,
earth, which
Yeah.
is the one we're talking about today. Water,
yeah,
air,
yeah. Air is part of metal.
is it?
Yes, it
and
is.
fire.
And you forgot wood.
Oh, that's why.
So air,
Wood.
metal is together, and so you got wood. Let's go back on it. So you got wood, fire, earth, air, metal, water. Okay.
Interesting.
We're not gonna go too much in detail about all of them, obviously, because we could be on it for hours.
In
But
last episode we talked about water, so
Yeah.
we're gonna stick to earth today.
yeah. So earth basically has the components of, or the organs that are related to it, is the pancreas and the stomach. So a lot of the solar plexus area, the chakra of the solar plexus, digestive area. Yeah. So that's what we can. That's what we're gonna be looking at mainly. Briefly, what we can see with fire, the organs with fire. I know I've done this podcast a few
Talk about
times.
that another day.
But if you want, we could. Well, okay, we'll just stick with earth.
Stick
then.
to
We'll
earth
stick
for
with earth.
today.
So we also we also could see adrenal glands in the earth element. So adrenal glands, basically, that they manage your stress levels, right? So your cortisol levels, your stress levels, giving you the energy you need throughout the day. Adrenal glands are also part of water. In my opinion, they could be both. They could be in both, really. Why we have the adrenal glands in the earth is because they're actually closely related to the pancreas. Your sugar production and whatnot has a relation to the cortisol production. So your cortisol, again, is your stress hormone. So what negative emotion can we see in these type of people? Basically anxiety and worriness. High levels of anxiety and high levels of, I have the French word in my head, inquiétude. But you're always worrying too much. You're worrying about finances, you're worrying about yourself, you're worrying about your partner, you're worrying about your spouse, you're worrying about your kids, list goes on and on, right? So you're always worrying and stressing about something.
Anxiety disorder.
Pretty much. So that's like a crazy form of anxiety, right? So anxiety, we always look at it and think of like the liver
The
and
unknown
whatnot,
and
the
unafraid
unknown, exactly.
of everything.
So you're always worrying about what's to come or what's to happen, but nothing actually ever happens if you're living in the present moment, right? So that's something
Take
to
it as it goes when you live
exactly.
in the present.
So that's something to take note of.
And how does that relate to earth?
The element earth? Well,
Like, is there a way that Chinese medicine sees it and that, like, the earth itself handles the wind, right? It hits it. Fire comes out of nowhere. Volcano. Could be like the earth is worrying about all these things that can happen to it. Makes sense how
Well,
they personalize these
yeah.
things.
So you could see, so like you said, the fire is, so fire with the volcanoes, right? So basically you're gonna feed the earth, and the earth feeds the air and the metal. So what comes out of metal, what feeds the metal, or what comes out of earth
Metal
is
being
metal being the
minerals,
minerals
no?
and stuff. Exactly what I was gonna say. But good, you're already ahead. So there's always, in a traditional Chinese medicine cycle, there's always a cycle, a clockwise cycle to follow. Wood feeding your fire, where if you put wood on fire, then the fire grows, and if you put fire on earth, then the earth grows, because that's how you form the ashes, or that the ashes form the earth, or form the mud, form the sand.
And it's interesting this because Chinese medicine is based on how they looked at nature and they looked at how nature affected people.
Yeah.
And they started realizing the seasons of change. Started people noticing people's behaviors started
Yeah.
to change.
Yeah, and that's perfect, because what we're gonna say next is personality traits, and people that have an Earth personality are mostly someone who's a protector, and these aren't necessarily good or bad, mainly good, but people that are very friendly, they're calm, they're very generous, they're maternal aspect as well, so more of the mother side of something, or the feminine side of an aspect. They're harmonious. They like to please everyone at the same time, so that's kind of the downside. They're very present, so even though they're thinking ahead and they're always worrying, they're actually supposed to be people that are very present. Why? Earth is present. When we sit down with ourselves and we meditate, we're connecting with the Earth, Mother Gaia, so we're connecting with Mother Earth. We're actually supposed to be present. So that's one way of looking at someone, that when we're balanced, that's when we're present. When we're imbalanced, that's when we get too many worry issues.
Are you saying that someone who has the ability of, well, who's Earth, can feel this way, and this is what they go through?
Yeah, pretty much. So I'm talking about personality traits when someone is balanced, right? So someone that is imbalanced can always go from one extreme to the other, right? We're always talking about extremes.
Right, and like we discussed in past videos, we discussed the reality of where you begin,
Yep.
where the ego then starts, and then the influence from the environment.
Exactly.
So, in Chinese medicine, like we discussed last episode, if you're born a certain year, you're the element of earth plus a certain animal, right? So, I myself is water, as a horse, water. How was yours again? You were a goat.
I was
something?
a goat. I was a goat. Oh man. I was
your element?
I forgot my element. A goat, and I think it
Okay.
was, yeah.
We'll figure it out for next episode. So yeah, earth.
So these are also people that are very loyal as well. So, and I'm talking about traits of one person being an earth element, but we could be traits of all five combined. It's just when we're an earth element, that's our more dominant element, but we could still have a composition of all the other elements as well, right?
And this is to do with the topic of the idea of, like, is there a destiny? Is it that you're born a certain way? Is your love energy and your love frequency more connected to a certain type than others? In Chinese medicine, the answer is yes. And like I said last time, they believe in it so much that they rather hold back having a child to ensure it's a dragon child. That's interesting.
Actually, funny side note. Going deeper into my meditations this week, I actually figured out that there was a dragon element in my presence.
Oh,
Yeah.
look at
Yeah, so I'm
Mm.
connecting with the dragons these days. So that's our spiritual healer, Dorothy.
that. Hi.
So basically, to continue, these are just Earth. Earth people are just basically very joyful and just happy about life in general, right? If they're well balanced, and that's what our solar plexus is holding in. When people are blocked, it's people holding in a lot of emotions, but most of the time they're not happy. They're not happy with themselves. They're not happy with the environment. They're always stressing, so they're keeping everything bottled up in the center of their. Basically, the base of their diaphragm, and everything just sits on their stomach.
The solar plexus is also where their identity lies, right?
Yeah,
So
the ego.
The ego lies, especially the ego.
Yeah.
And remember, the ego is based on what does civilization tell you need to have to survive in civilization. But when you go into the forest, which is the real world, you are who you are. And keep in mind, this is where the Chinese medicine agrees with you, right? Chinese medicine is based on nature. It's based on the reality of what they came up with this 5,000 years ago, and they still keep it up to date. So that's 5,000 years old we're talking about.
Yeah,
The
plus.
ego of civilization, that's very recent. Maybe the 1970s, if anything. Because around the 1970s is when everyone started having a TV. TV started telling you how to be. You need to wear makeup. You need
I
to
would
wear
go a little
this.
further than
Further
the
than
1970s.
60
but yeah.
then. And you start looking at that giving you an ego in there. That's something that is very recent, and which is, we're starting to notice the
So I think what
consequence of that
what
stuff.
Chris is trying to say is ego has always been there, but it's just been more dominant in the last decade, the last century or so, because of everything that's been presented with us.
Yeah, because the influences of the TV compared to the
And,
influences
I think
of
the main word you just said was influences.
Well, here
That
it
was
is,
what it is.
because keep this in mind. The ego of today that we see today is because of social media.
Mm-hmm.
The ego of the past was because of nature. Nature. Because that's where Chinese medicine comes from. That's where this topic is coming from.
And this is why we always go back to Chinese medicine, is because
5,000 plus years.
But it's not just that. It's just it resonates with everything around us, because those are the natural laws.
Nature.
Natural laws of nature, exactly.
Because you're human. Human is nature. Until you start living in the metaverse, you're not. That's
Pretty
what
much.
it is.
Someone that has small hands or a small neck, their face is very square, but their legs can be strong. They're also someone that can be part of the earth element. Someone that's always having their extremities, so their hands and feet are always cold, their ears are always cold, the tip of their nose is always cold. That's someone that's part of an earth element as well.
So as you can see, Chinese medicine even goes into the physical aspects of you.
So actually, to go even further, Chinese medicine touches on everything about you. Everything characteristically, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So it touches on everything. We just break it down so that it's easier for us to understand as individuals and as humans.
But again, keep in mind, is this the truth? Is it not the truth? It all comes up to you. You choose. And that's the greatness of No Name Podcast. You now know the information.
So when people have like a sense of loss of identity, that can cause a sense of worry as well. And that actually lines up to an imbalance of earth element. So that's something to look into as well. So people that can't say no, they're always saying yes to everybody, and they're just planning after planning after planning, and they're just saying yes. They have no time to just détendre. Again, I was going
De-stress.
De-stress and just relax. Those are people that are earth element as well. It's someone that has to please everybody and always say yes. So that's something to think note of, is if you're someone that's always saying yes, it's time to put yourselves first and bring back the energy into your own body, into your own mind. Take back what's yours, because that's just gonna, again, I'm going back into French here previously, that's just gonna burn you out. I don't know why I'm going French today.
And you know what? I just want to point out the interesting correlations that we're starting to notice here. You know, you look at this, you look at the DSM-5, Diagnosis Psychology, it starts to really connect.
Mm-hmm.
You start really noticing that there's similarities in the way that 5,000 years ago, people wanted to understand themselves. And we used the earth and the elements around us to make us understand.
Yeah.
While today, it's more bigger words because they want to feel smart. Because the reality is just information, it's just recognizing what's going on in somebody. But anyways, you don't have to make it so complicated. This makes it pretty simple.
Yeah. Very broad but simple. Because why broad? Because it could be touching on everyone and everything in different aspects, right? Like we said, we could have a characteristic of all 5 elements. So,
Well, then I'm happy you said that. Remember, in Chinese philosophy, Chinese mythology and philosophy, when you're born, you got 4 different animals. Your secret one, your true one, you're out, and you're in.
yeah.
So it's interesting. It's exactly what we're talking about here.
And that's what creates a good balance of an individual, right?
Yes.
A bit of everything, but dominating in one aspect, and that's what keeps your true characters alive.
And in psychological conversation, you have your career, you have your family life, you have your hobby life, you have your private life. You have all these different lives, technically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like whatever you do in your bathroom is your private life. Your wife doesn't even have to know what you're doing in there. But the point is, don't be creepy.
So when we're talking about the physical aspects, physical ailments, when the earth element is imbalanced, we're looking at people that are fatigued, congested in the stomach, so they can't go to the bathroom, or they're passing a lot of diarrhea, right? So extremes. Stomach acid is always blocked, or they always get reflux, so a lot of acidity in the stomach. Hormonal imbalances that mess up the HPA axis. So basically, that's your stress levels in the body, your gateway to stress. You always have sugar cravings as well, and your gastrointestinal tract is completely imbalanced as well. So it could cause insomnia. It could cause bloating. It could cause bacterial overgrowth and whatnot. So,
And would you say that this is because sometimes the weather changes out of nowhere?
honestly, it weather, and that's why we touched on this topic before, is because the weather changed in like seconds, right? From hot to cold in seconds, and cold, heat.
Your body
weather-
cannot handle it.
Yeah, 100%. Prime example. I always give myself as an example, but I can't deal with the wind. If I have wind hitting me, then I know that it's gonna start doing something to my body where I end up coming out with cracked hands and cracked face and stuff. So it's weather can do a lot, and a lot of people come up and say, but I feel like it's humid today and if it hurts my joints. Well, yes, humidity does have an effect on the body, which if your body is too humid is another aspect that there's an imbalance in your earth element. Why? It's because your pancreas, actually even further, your spleen, if there's too much humidity, your spleen is going to be what's imbalanced. So you want to create some proper balance using, I only know the word in French, it's a type of herb, that's what I use. It's called Peau d'Arco, so P-A-U space D' A-R-C-O. It's a type of herb, it's drops. This is actually something that I need to use because I know that is going to help me with my spleen as well, because I do sense that, or I do know that there's a lot of humidity in my body as well. And that's probably one of the reasons why I don't do well with wind. So yes, having a switch of weather or temperature in drastic changes can have an effect on our bodies as well. Natural laws of the universe. We just got to know how to play with it.
And this brings to the last topic, the reality and possibility that what if there is technology out there that controls the weather? Well, here's some fun information. One of the lead physicians on string theory, his name is Mikio Carillo. He's a Japanese name, so obviously I can't say it properly, so forgive me, but check him out. His name, how you spell it is, how did I lose it? There it is. Mikio, and then last name is Kariu. Check him out. Anyways, he talked about something very intriguing on Joe Rogan's episode podcast a few days ago, a year ago, whatever. He said something about there's 3 types of advanced civilizations, and he said we're about 100 to 1,000 years away from being a civilization that can control the weather. So when he said that, I was like, oh, someone who literally is involved with that Ryler, that machine that makes 2 atoms hit each other, whatever.
Yes, sir.
What he said. If this guy is saying that there's 3 types of civilization, and the first one being an advanced civilization that can control the weather, that's an interesting factor, right? Because he said it himself that as we move forward in our civilization, we will become people who can control the weather. So, here's a crazy idea. What if the past 20 years is because we started playing with that kind of technology, and, human beings like to cause a lot of problems when we discuss certain things, like things not being what it's supposed to be. Maybe
Out of the norm.
Out of the
Things out of the
norm.
norm.
Maybe we would get mad and be like, oh, it's your fault. You're screwing up. So for immunity reasons, it's not my fault. I was just practicing something. Let's say they have been practicing with the weather. Who's to say they're not? Because if that guy is saying that's possible, I'm saying it's totally possible. And what if the whole idea of climate change is to, affront, to make sure that we don't get mad at the governments, to being like, hey, you're practicing with technology that's crazy. You just flooded my house. It's your fault. Immunity, not us.
And this is why we try and stay as close as possible to Mother Gaia, Mother Nature. Their natural laws of nature, pretty much, right? Is we don't want to mess with it, because then it's always going to come back. Look, I've always said this as a naturopath. We have every resource possible to help our body in nature. Why? Because Earth has been around longer than civilization, so it knows how to cure itself. And the world can cure itself without us. It doesn't need us.
We're a speck
Yeah.
on this earth.
If it wants, it could swallow
And
us
just
whole.
a bit of a shout out to one of our viewers, Golf 2022.
Yeah.
Climate change is a hoax. Well, listen, that's your opinion, but we can't say much on ours because we don't want to be demonetized. But yes, based on what I told you, check it out. If that guy is saying that advanced civilization were to control it, this whole thing could be a front to say, hey, we're practicing certain things that are playing God.
Yeah.
Don't get mad at us. And no, it's your fault because you're driving gas.
So you could see, like, how is it so windy these days? It hasn't stopped being windy in the longest time. It's 3 days straight. It's
And
been
it could
crazy
be
wind.
that they're practicing wind.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But based on this Earth stuff, it's the reality that some of us are going through a lot right now.
Mhm.
Because maybe, just maybe the fact of them playing with the weather has caused us to have a civilization of confusion when it comes to our identity.
Pretty much, right? Worries when we start worrying about everything, including climates or just weather in
Because
general.
nothing's happening naturally.
Yeah.
So if things were being happening naturally, like the past 5,000 years, we would be following these simple remedies and these simple realities of, Chinese medicine that's been on for 5,000 years.
Yeah.
It just makes sense. It's logical, right? It's 1 + 1 = 2. So if you remove the 1, being that the control stuff, it makes sense that it's equaling 1. That
Very
was
fair
math.
So what can we do to help keep our balance in check? Most people are that are on Earth, they're gonna end up being, or like I said before, they're gonna have more sugar cravings. So what we want to do is supply enough sugar from basically your meats, your legumes, so your lentils and stuff like that, nuts, root food, and some healthy dairy products, right? So your goat cheese or your kefir and stuff like that, something that's not man-made. So if you get raw milk, is actually better. But you want to try and stay from all artificial sugars and artificial or produced sugars. Even try and avoid empty carbs or empty sugars, stuff like syrup, stuff like honey. Even fruits for that matter. In this transition, in this period of time now, try and stay away from the fruits if you're an earth element. Again, you don't know if you're an earth element, but if you sense that if fruits are giving you a trouble, stay away from fruits for the time being. What you could also do is just eat anything that is yellow or yellow-orange. Why? Again, solar plexus is yellow, and the earth element is actually yellow. So anything that's yellow-orange, orange-yellow, so you got sweet potatoes, you got corn, is walnuts, you could have apricots, cantaloupe, oranges, yellow or orange oranges. You could even have just pumpkin, squash. Those are orange as well. So try and go more orange and yellow again. Another thing that's good is decompress yourselves. Try and go to a spot for a little retreat. Try and get a little downtime for yourself. Try and meditate a little more. Try and be around people that calm you and not elevate your stress. So those are things to think of. Really try and take time for yourselves again. And of course, there's a whole bunch of herbs and supplements that you could use. Like for herbs, you could use astragalus, licorice root for that matter, cinnamon. You could also use curcumin. For supplements, you could use zinc, B6, hydrochloric acid, which is actually specifically for the stomach. You could use ashwagandha, which is one of my favorite adaptogens for the gut and to decompress stress. Rhodiola, complex B, vitamin A, and pancreatic enzymes, or any other enzymes that are pancreatic enzymes specifically for the pancreas, of course. So again, pancreas, I know I've mentioned this before, the pancreas actually helps with your sugars. So if you have proper pancreatic enzymes, then you'll actually have a balanced sugar and insulin level. So think about those aspects when it's like now it's change of seasons. if you forgot already what we spoke about at the beginning of the podcast, go back. Of course, we have this on YouTube, and it will be uploaded on Instagram like always. So there was a lot of information. I'm sure you didn't take it all down, but go back, try and see what characteristics help you guys or kind of denote what a earth element is, and hopefully you guys boost your energies using these methods, and you can pass through transition phases. Don't.
All right.
And last note is try not to worry so much. I know it's harder, easier said than done, but
Be one with the universe.
Yeah.
Be one with Earth.
just be present. And once you're present, you start worrying less. That's the best advice I could give. On that note,
We could.
we care, guys. Enjoy.